Hey everybody, welcome back to Fighting Matters. I'm Steve Kwan from BJJ Mental Models. I've got my boys Mike Mahaffey from Old Bastard BJJ. Mike, how's it going?
Sleeveless as usual.
You have to be shirtless in this weather. I don't know about where you are, man, but where I am up here in Vancouver, it is hot as heck. I am currently, for those who are on a video can see, I'm currently chugging an alcoholic beverage because it's cold, and if I don't drink it, I think my face is going to melt like Kristi Noem. So that's my thing. I'm assuming everyone here saw South Park, right? Is that a fair assumption?
Yes. Yeah. No, it's hot as shit out in here, in Michigan too. So our poor viewers are going to see me in a tank top once again.
Yep. Yeah. Well, you were going to do that anyway. I mean, you do that on Christmas, don't you? You're kind of tank top weather all the time.
That's right. Sun's out, guns out, baby.
Right to bear arms, buddy. Right? What's the point of being an American if you don't have the right to bear arms? That's what we're here for.
Exactly.
Jesse Walker from Rough Hands BJJ. Sir, how's it going?
What's up, everybody? I'm good. It is also really fucking hot here, so I'm glad to be in the AC.
I would presume it's pretty warm in Louisville at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Jesse, do you want to introduce our new friend?
I would love to. Tonight we have invited one of my best friends. Eric Muntz is here from Atlanta, Georgia. Eric, say hi to everybody.
Hello, everyone. And I guess I'll pile on. It's really fucking hot in Atlanta.
Yeah, so if there's some background noise on this episode, I apologize in advance, but I think everyone's got their windows open and their fans on, myself included. So, yeah, it's been a while. I mean, for the listeners, they don't know that because we've been pushing out episodes every week, but I was out of town. So we had a bunch in the queue that we'd been meaning to get to, so we just kind of slowly unrolled all of those. It's always a trick with this particular podcast because a lot of what we do is very tied to current events, so you got to kind of time it carefully or it loses its meaning. But we had a few good ones in the bank that I wanted to get out there, and that's been cleared out now, so we get to record again. Maybe Jesse and Eric, why don't you guys introduce the topic? Because Jesse, you and I and Mike were kind of talking about this one. We thought it would be good to discuss. And you mentioned that Eric is someone who, has really good opinions and thoughts on this matter. Do you want to go ahead and kick this guy off?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So, this episode, we're going to spend some time firing shots at the left side of the political spectrum. We spend a lot of time beating up on the right. But we need to take some responsibility and deal with some of our issues on the left. And two of the things that I think it's all related, but two of the particular things that I think we want to touch on and talk about tonight are the issue of purity testing, right? This concept of making sure that something or someone is pure or good enough to be X, and we'll talk about kind of what that means later. And this idea of a circular firing squad, as opposed to coming together to fight some common issue, we oftentimes have a tendency to get into so much infighting with each other that nothing ever gets accomplished. And both of those issues are killing our momentum and our ability to affect change and make progress on a lot of these issues that we're dealing with. Eric, do you have anything to add to that?
Not really. Every time you and I talk about this, we talk about both being like outcast punk rock kids in the 90s, and then looking around and realizing that a lot of the attitudes we had, right, of like, we were nerdy or whatever else, not accepted by whoever. We found some awesome music that we could just rock out to. We found a group of people who, were accepting of that. And the next thing we know, we're surrounded by a bunch of people who were unaccepting of basically anything not exactly like them. Mm-hmm. And I think it's Screeching Weasel. Is that the song that I always reference with you that has the song, We Become What We Hate?
Yeah.
And it's just right. It's just like the perfect example, perfect song to sort of demonstrate this deal where it's like, oh, we're going to be outcasts. And then there's that great, we were talking about South Park earlier, that great South Park episode where they go to be the goth kids. And they're like, all you have to do to be a nonconformist is dress exactly like we dress, listen to the exact music we do, and wear the exact same clothes we do. And it's just like, yeah, that's not the way.
Yeah. It's a problem that we talked about in one of the recent episodes with Mike German, I believe. We talked about how one of the remarkable things about the current right is that they've created these incredibly bizarre coalitions. I mean, if you went back in time 20 years and said there's going to be a coalition with the world's richest man and Donald Trump, who will also be president, and Robert F. Kennedy Jr., I mean, you would think that's absolute nonsense. These people on paper don't have anything in common ideologically, except maybe the pursuit of power, right? But
Right.
they've been able to put aside their differences and create a coalition. Whereas if you take a look at what happened on the left, it really feels like when you look at how the right operates, it's all about how can we bring people into this group? How can we create bigger, stronger numbers? Whereas on the left, like you said, Jesse, there's a lot more purity testing, a lot more. How can we remove people from the group who we don't think are good enough, or who are less than, or who don't meet our lofty standards? And although I know that comes from a good place, you know, it comes from a place of wanting to hold us to a high standard. That's great and all, but what winds up happening is you wind up splintering coalitions, losing support, and kneecapping your own movements before they even get going. I mean, I've certainly seen this myself. I'm sure you guys have seen it as well.
Yeah, I mean, the paradox of tolerance, I think that stands. I don't think we should tolerate intolerance, but, you know, I think we also have to recognize that people are complex and imperfect, and give people some grace and some room to grow, right? So, you know, and if we don't do that, if we expect everybody to show up to the cause perfect already, then we're never going to get anything moving. It's like in jiu-jitsu, like you don't have to be, if everybody had to be perfect to get a black belt, there'd be one black belt maybe, right?
Who would it be?
Probably Steve Kwan, you know, look at that guy.
Specimen over here. Well, you know what? We can actually make this conversation useful for jiu-jitsu people. Hallelujah. Unbelievable. But Jesse, on BJJ Mental Models, you've talked about this concept before that you call the paradox of control. And
Yeah.
it sounds very relevant here. Do you want to explain that for people who maybe don't know what this language means? Because when you told this to me, I thought, fuck, that's a really insightful idea.
Yeah, so it's this concept, and when we talk about it in jiu-jitsu, it's the concept that you can actually end up devoting so much of your resources to having complete control over a person that neither one of you all are able to take any action anymore, so that the game cannot move forward until you release some of that control and allow movement to start to occur again. That's a really interesting parallel that Steve just kind of noticed to this common problem, especially when we're talking about purity testing, right? Is people trying to exert so much control over the group and who is allowed to be in the group and who is out of the group, that the group ends up never growing, never progressing, and never making any real progress.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I guess the example I can give, the parallel I could give is right now, right today, if I said, you know what, I was wrong. The left sucks. I'm MAGA now. For the rest of my life, I'm MAGA, pro-Trump, make America great again. I mean, we all know I would be accepted immediately within right-wing circles and probably supported, right?
Yeah,
and
all is
similar,
forgiven.
Yeah, exactly. Similarly, you know, I don't know, who is a left-wing boogeyman? AOC, right? If AOC switched parties to the Republican Party tomorrow and said, you know what, my life is a lie, I was wrong about everything, I'm going to go full MAGA, she would be immediately accepted and probably hailed as some sort of hero. The opposite would never apply, right? And we're seeing this right now with folks like Joe Rogan trying to moderate back to the left a bit after realizing that it was probably a mistake to go all in on Trump and all in on MAGA. And so many people on the left are completely against that, right? And their stance is basically, look, you made your bed, you chose to lay in it, you are never welcome back in this coalition again. And the end result of doing that over and over and over again is you shrink your coalition and the number of people that you can let in the door. And I mean, Joe Rogan is a pretty extreme example because he's arguably culpable for a lot of the problems that we have to some degree. But there are a lot of people who, for one reason or another, they see that the right is not serving them and they want to switch to support progressive causes. And progressives make that so hard sometimes, including alienating their own people. Rogan being a good example as well, right? Someone who used to be considered probably a bit more to the left, but just wound up feeling alienated from those people and wound up going somewhere where he was a bit more welcome. And it always makes me wonder how much of all of these people who kind of land in the right, and you look at these coalitions and think, what do these people have in common? I mean, is it all that they're a bunch of grifters and they're just lying for power or money? Maybe, I don't know. But it could also be that they're still human beings, right? They've been maybe they feel like they've been driven out of other spaces and they found somewhere where they were welcomed. And that is something that the left is tremendously bad at, in my opinion.
I'll tell you where I think one of the worst areas of interaction that it happens with is in our use of language, right? That's where so much of the purity testing takes place. If you don't use the exact right nomenclature and lexicon for whatever group or population or
It's
you are
unhoused. It's unhoused, not homeless.
right, you are immediately discounted and even for a relatively lefty person like me, it's hard to even keep track of all the language changes. And if you
Yep.
say the wrong thing, no matter what the intent is behind it, you've got tons of people getting mad at you about it. And again, to your point, like, I understand we're trying to hold ourselves to high standards and make sure that we're not hurting people with our words. But we do need to start paying more attention to the intent and the actions behind the words rather than the words themselves, because we're cutting a lot of people out of the picture that way.
I love this. Sorry, I don't want to. I want to give Eric. I want to learn more about Eric and give him a chance to speak. This is really making me think of an experience I had last week. A really good experience. I'm going to self-disclose here a little bit. Once a month, I attend a group for parents of transgender kids, right? And excuse me. And it's a really good group, and it's ran by a transgender individual. And we had somebody new show up for the monthly meeting last week. And this person, my transgender kid is an adult now, and this person's transgender kid is adult now and just starting to come out. And this woman was obviously loved her adult kid, and was super supportive, and kept misusing pronouns and screwing up the new name versus the old name or whatever. And I know the facilitator, who happens to be transgender, really well, but I was still a little on edge. And it was just a beautiful, this facilitator was perfect in because the woman kept saying, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry, I shouldn't do that." And facilitator was like, "Look, you obviously love your adult child, and your intent is right there. Just takes practice, and that's okay. This is a safe space for you to make those mistakes, right? You're just practicing it." And I have definitely seen other people go off the handle if there's a misuse of a pronoun, or people make mistakes, and I'm the first one to admit that. And I've got a transgender kid. These things happen. So I think it made me think about that example when we were talking about this tonight on the show. And it made me think that's what I would love to see more of, people who are coming with good faith but still working out how to fit in and the best way to be supportive. We need to give people grace to make some mistakes, right?
How much of that, Mike, do you think is because of modern culture and the fact that so many of our conversations are online?
I mean, I think probably a lot of it is because it's really hard to uh read intent over text, right? Especially in an online space where you don't know the other person. Like any one of us, we have a text thread going hundreds of texts a day to each other, right? But I know you all pretty well, and I know we're all coming at stuff in good faith. But I think with strangers online, that's really difficult, and so it's really easy for people to get their hackles up and not give people a ton of grace. What do you think about that, Eric? What are your thoughts on this stuff?
I mean, I think your example is perfect for some words that Jesse said earlier when you said assume positive intent. Another way to maybe phrase that, and at the risk of being the person who gets all crazy about words, but another way to maybe phrase that is to like actually take a moment and think about someone's intent, right? Because if in that same meeting for parents of transgender kids, if somebody was in there and was openly, angrily refusing to use the proper pronoun, that's a specific intent, right? That is like, I am not seeing what you're doing as worth my time. And it's a pretty dickhead thing to do, right? Like, let's just call it what it is.
Correct.
But if someone says it right a few times and then wrong a few times and even like gets red-faced or says, oh, I'm sorry, and tries to correct it and then still gets it wrong a few times, they aren't being malicious, right? It's not great. It's still not what they want. It's not what the person who's being pronouned wants, but we can still give them the same grace that it seems like this facilitator gave them, right? And was like, it might take a moment. And maybe if instead you think like, how can I help this person? Maybe there's like some shortcut, like tell them, hey, start using their name instead of pronouncing at all, right? Like just for a little while, do it that way, right? And bring them into the mix instead of just be like, you mispronoun, you are out of the circle, not pure enough of a lefty supporter ally, out, right? Like,
were you there?
Because they weren't even trying to be rude.
Were you there?
Because that's exactly what one of the other parents said, was like, one thing, this other parent was like, one thing I've done is I just started using their new name like all the time in sentences until it just became habit, like until they were nobody else in my head, right? Like just, and then we don't have to worry about pronouns. You just use the name.
And, I think that's a really great example of where words matter a lot. And I think most people can gather around and understand why names are important and why we have identity wrapped up in pronouns. But I do think, and, I can't wait to get all the comments about this. I do think that we play a lot of silly language games on the left, and it just turns into a fucking roulette wheel of terminology. In terms of looking at a dictionary, the difference between homeless and unhoused, to get mad about that, like, it's really silly. And, another example that I've stepped in, and I'm saying this as a parent of a child with autism, is, if you call somebody autistic and say, instead of saying they are a person with autism, you just step on a landmine. And it's like, what?
I mean, we always talk about Occam's razor, right? All other things equal, the simplest solution is probably best. There's another less discussed concept called Grice's razor, or I think it's Grice's razor. I might be wrong about that. But basically the idea is to prefer and to focus on what someone meant rather than what they literally said. And this is a significant difference between the left and the right. The right doesn't really care about the facts or about what is literally said. They care about the intent. And the intent is crush the libs, right? That is basically the intent. The exact specifics of what the policy doesn't matter. It's all about how can we own the libs. Well, at least it's it's a unified goal. On the left, on the other hand, everything is literal. There's no thought put into how to, what was the meaning behind that message. It's all about what was literally said and was that correct. And the problem with focusing on literality like that, on what was literally said, is it doesn't take a lot of brain power to put someone on the defense because of the words they chose, right? I'm sure that just based on the conversations that all of us have had, any one person could clip 5 seconds out of this and find a choice of words that we use that we didn't even think twice about and come at us after that. And maybe there's a point in doing so. But the problem is when you do that, you put the other person immediately on the defense. You immediately create an us versus them mindset. And now that person is going to be defensive. They're not going to want to engage with you because no one wants to get attacked by the same person twice, right? If my only interaction with someone is they launch an attack on my character because of some specific word I use that they didn't like, then it really makes me not want to work with that person or engage with that person again. And I do bring that up because I know many people whose hearts are really in the right place. They really are. I know that for a fact, but they're very, very on the offensive with their choice of language that they use and language policing and ideological policing and purity testing. And what winds up happening, if that's the thing that you become known for, hi, how are you? My name is Bob. By the way, you're using the wrong language and you're not where you're supposed to be on the left-right spectrum. Immediately out of the gate, you put people on the defense and that splinters your coalition right out of the gate. So I'm not saying that stuff isn't important. But I'm just saying that you got to pick your battles, right? Sometimes we have to look for a Venn diagram. We have to find people that we can work with because there's enough in common that we can get good things done together. That doesn't mean we agree on everything. We might strongly disagree about certain important matters, but maybe we can pause those to get important work done right now and we can deal with the lesser priority stuff later.
Especially given what's going on in the United States right now. I think we have bigger fish to fry than whether we use the words unhoused or homeless. You know?
It's much more of a concern that we are trying to round those communities up and put them in camps and make them leave DC. Whatever label you put on them, they're in trouble, they're in danger. Let's deal with that.
Right. And I work in the mental health field. I'm saying this because I know Eric doesn't know me and doesn't know that. And like the terminology changes, I don't want to say all the time. It's not like I'm going to go to work tomorrow and be given a list of new terms that I have to memorize. But, I've been in the field for decades and the terminology that is used professionally does change, right? And my feeling about it is we were talking about autism, the spectrum a minute ago, right? If I know somebody with autism that says, hey, I'd prefer you don't say I'm autistic, that if we're talking about it, you say I have autism, like I'm going to respect that. That's fine, right? So like I always want to default to what the person wants rather than being stuck with a certain narrow set of language to describe things, right? It's just about respecting other human beings, in my opinion. And I'm not going to police other people about it, right? Like, I don't care if you call me Mike or Michael or Mikey, right? But like, if Jesse doesn't want to be called Jess, then I'm not going to call you Jess.
I prefer Triple J.
Oh,
Mike
yeah.
missed that whole episode. Jesse has
no.
I listen to a wrestling moniker now. He's a pro wrestler.
I listened to it. I think I texted y'all right when I heard it.
I meant to change my name on the screen today, but I forgot.
Yeah, but it's a tricky one because that's not to say that these issues aren't important. Allowing people to express their authentic identity is fundamentally important. People sometimes, especially on the right, people love to make this big deal about things like pronouns, and they love to talk about, oh, look at the silly left. They care so much about pronouns. And like, it's not about the pronouns, right? It's about, do you respect someone's right to define their own identity? Do you respect someone's right to be the person that they say they are? It would be like if Jesse said, "Hi, my name is Jesse," and I said, Jesse, I don't know, Jesse, you look more like a fuckface to me. I'm going to call you fuckface from now on.
That's actually, I think we've gotten that comment before.
I'm sure we have. But
we're not
my
talking
point,
about
right?
what your wife calls you, Jesse.
Yeah, let's not get into that.
Yeah. But you take my point, right? That my point being that we all should have a right to define our identity and to expect that other people will respect that identity. That's all that pronouns is. I don't think being overly anal about this stuff is the biggest priority in the world. But if someone, tells me like, "Hey, here are my pronouns," I will obviously respect them, and I would expect everyone else to respect them too. If you don't, you're I think it was Ezra Klein who was talking about this, who said like, "Look, we can talk about pronouns and the importance of it and not, but at the end of the day, if someone tells you, 'Please address me by these pronouns,' and you refuse, you're just an asshole. There's really no way around it, right? There's no good excuse for that. If you refuse to acknowledge someone's preferred identity, you're just a dick. And in a lot of ways, the left is guilty of this too, because they can mudsling like crazy at the right. And I'm sure we've done this on the podcast too. So I don't mean to paint this as just something that the right does. But really, to me, one of the fundamental benefits of living in a free society is the right to freedom of expression, and part of that is freedom of expressing what your identity is. And we should all do our best to respect other people around us, however they choose to define that. But the flip side of that is, if someone makes a mistake in good faith, you can just gently correct them, right? You don't need to jump down their throat or make a huge deal out of this. I saw someone recently who posted a Threads comment that went viral and got like a ton of engagement. And then they had to post a follow-up and apologize, because at some point, like, they had used the word "her," but they felt like that wasn't, I guess they'd gotten feedback that wasn't gender inclusive enough. And so they changed it. And I'm thinking, like, God, we've got a fascist in the White House, right? We've got concentration camps in America. We've got people of all stripes losing their rights on an active basis. The economy is going into the shitter. Like, can we just focus on that for the time being? I feel like sometimes with our ideas and our goals of being, of holding this high standard for ourselves, we sometimes get distracted and focus on the wrong thing.
Yeah, and the other thing that occurs to me, there are not even that we necessarily need to identify which groups I'm talking about. It may be self-evident. But a lot of times the language changes to move away from hurting feelings, right? So were certain groups of people that were called certain things when I was born, and that became kind of an insult used in as common parlance in just the community as a whole. And then we have to change, instead of actually working on changing the behavior or changing the intention behind it, we'll just give that group a new name. Which kind of, in my opinion, it misses the point. And the point is, and I guess we can identify, but just continuing to move the target is not going to change the ill will, or whatever kind of intention is behind the use of that language. It will continue to stay derogatory, and you'll have to just keep moving that target. So to me, a lot of that is we're addressing the wrong issue, which is frustrating.
I want to dig into that, just if I could. One of the things that I think is really interesting, and I think would be interesting for y'all as, martial arts experts here, is one of the things that I see happen often is that a lot of times the things that you're both talking about actually happen by someone or a group on behalf of another group, right? So like they are super ultra offended on behalf of group X. And so this other group decides that group X has to now be called group Y because, the term X became the thing that is all whatever around, and we have to now start calling them group Y. And this is a thing that I think is pretty uniquely like left, getting like really bent around the axle, offended on behalf of someone else, of a group that you're not even a part of, you may not even really know that well. um and how it ties together is like, as people who are very skilled in martial arts, you are defenders, right? Like I mean, I know that Jesse hangs his hat on being able to defend the people he loves, right? And so I'd be curious, how you think about that type of culture and where it can go wrong. Sort of as a little bit of a flip against what you really do.
I mean, that's a really good thing to think about. And I mean, for me, it just comes back to, uh, I've done a lot of advocacy. I've been really vocal on behalf of the LGBTQ community, which I'm not a part of, right? Uh, for obvious reasons, because I just told you I've got kids in that community. So I was just asked the community, what do you need? Right? Like, it's not up to me to decide what I can do for you. It's up to you to tell me what I can do for you. Right? What do you want to be called? What, on the individual level, what pronouns do you use? What do you want to be called? What name do you want to use? But like on the community level, where can I be of help? You tell me what you need. I'm not going to dictate to you what you need. You tell me what you need.
Because otherwise you end up with things like Latinx. My understanding is no one in that community has any interest in connecting to that term.
And now, granted, I am not in that community, so I'm hesitant to speak on behalf of that community. But I have also heard that a lot of Latino people did not appreciate a bunch of other people reassigning their identity, and which I understand, right? And this is a tough one because, Eric, to your point, there's like a fine line between being a protector and being a white knight, right? It's a very
Right.
fine line, and sometimes it's not obvious. The natural tendency of pretty much anyone who does martial arts is probably going to be to try to jump in and be that defender, because to get into something like this and to do it for a living, especially, there's a certain personality type. People want to be that kind of person who can protect the people around them. However, it can be taken to the point where it takes agency away from the people you're advocating on behalf of. And it's not always obvious where that line is. And that's what makes this whole thing so hard. Like, I will give an example.
Agreed.
I know someone who was sexually assaulted. And the response of the community around her was to basically go after the accused, which is a completely understandable thing, right? A friend of yours gets sexually assaulted. You know who did it. So obviously you're going to want to do something about it. But that can present its own problems, because if you start speaking on behalf of a victim who may not have wanted the story to go public in the first place, right? You add a lot of trauma onto their life. You take someone who has already been traumatized and then you re-traumatize them by publicizing the story. It can also make the legal situation messier, because now there's more for the cops to worry about and they can't just investigate this case because now there's this big public blowback. So there's a fine line, and it's not always clear where that line is. I think it's noble to want to defend the people that you care about. And I think it's even more noble to defend the people that you don't even know. That's one of the things that I think is most admirable about the left, is people on the left will generally make big sacrifices to benefit people they don't even know, people they will never meet,
Agreed.
because it's
Yeah.
the right thing to do. And that is, I think, the strongest attribute of the left. However, you got to make sure you actually have the consent of the people that you're advocating on behalf of.
Right.
And that's where we
Right.
fuck it up sometimes.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, it's really interesting. Yeah. Yeah. And then Steve, I hear you and I have a similar experience where we do actually have some ability to speak on behalf of a group that we are a part of. But we do not appear to immediately look like we are part of that group. I wish I'd love to do this when she's actually physically in my house. I've done it a few times in podcasts or in video calls when my mom is here, and I'm like, "This is my mom," and a black woman walks in and is standing next to me, and people are like, "You're what?" My non-adopted biological mother is black. My dad is white. And in fact, they divorced when I was pretty young. I think I was right around 3. And then I lived with her parents until I was about 8 or 9, and then I lived with her until I went to college. I have no memories of living in a white house, right? And in the black community, I am what's called passing, which basically means passing for white. So go ahead and take in that it's just called passing, and that passing for white represents all of the things in society that represents. And then I show up at whatever, a corporate ERG, and I am the executive sponsor of the black ERG at a software company, and people go, say, huh? Or I show up at the family barbecue, and sort of distant relatives go,
who is that?
Say, huh? And look, it oftentimes is hard for me to speak on behalf of that community. My mom never had to have the cops conversation with me. She had to have it with my brother because he's darker skinned, right? Biological, same mother, same father. He was probably going to have problems if he gets pulled over at 2:00 in the morning in Kennesaw, Georgia, where we grew up. I was not going to have that problem, right? So we haven't had that conversation. But, I would walk around the world looking like this and being treated like you're treated when you look like this. And then I'd go shut the door to the home and be in a home where everyone in it is treated, like a Black American. So I have lots of context, and a lot of it is as close to firsthand as you can get without it being firsthand. But, I don't pass the purity test.
Yeah, I mean, that is a whole tricky one, right? Especially once you get into, oh God, I mean, we can even unpack the term people of color, right? Because that implies that basically the world should be divided into 2 groups of I'm white and I'm non-white. And that then raises the question of why am I, as someone of Asian heritage, being lumped into all of these, literally every other non-white culture into a group, right? And is that a fair thing to do? Because that denies cultural identity for a variety of different reasons. And that also doesn't even get into the fact that just considering people to be white is still also a little bit crazy because there's so many subcultures inside that. I mean, being German is completely different from being French, right? There's so much different backstory there. So I think that in our attempts to kind of create these terms to group everything together, sometimes it's easier to just let people, and again, this comes back to identity, just let people identify how they want and be who they are and not judge them accordingly. It gets tough though, because like you said, I mean, the reality is as awful as this is, there are advantages in society to being able to present a certain way, right? There are just different types of discrimination that are systemic, and that's just, we haven't solved that problem yet. I don't know if we ever can solve that problem. I don't know if it's solvable or if that's just something that's entrenched with the way we run societies. But that is a big issue. And so I understand the pushback, but on the other hand, I don't think it helps to tell people well, even though you are part X, you are not X enough to speak on behalf of what you are. I think that is an unproductive conversation. Jesse, you look like you had something to say.
Yeah, I mean, and to that point, it's problematic in both directions, right? We've heard maybe more than once, oh, you all need more POC voices on the podcast. And it's
we're trying. Okay.
We're trying. 50% of us on the screen right now are genetically POC, right? But you're looking at a screen and not seeing it and then shitting on us about it. And that feels just as discriminatory as, it going in the other direction. To discount, you all as not being Asian enough or not being Black enough or, whatever it is. It just seems crazy to me.
It's a purity test. It's the, and I mean, I get it, right? In some ways, the majority of the regular hosts on this show
are devilishly handsome.
well, not only
and also
devilishly.
bald and old. Those are the other two defining
Yes.
characteristics.
Oh my God. Yeah. Put a shirt
No
on,
diversity
old
there.
man. I was like, fuck you. I'm wearing tank tops forever now. Like, the majority of the regular folks on this show are white dudes, right? I get it. Like we're by just the way it falls, we're not necessarily a super ethnically diverse group, but we're doing our best to get different voices and different opinions and different perspectives on the show. And I can't help the fact that I'm lily white, right? Like, but
yeah, I mean, Mike, to be fair, you are especially white.
God, I am so
like,
I am
like,
so.
I mean, I don't even know if white is the right word. I mean,
he's kind of
Super
clear.
white.
I was going pasty. Pasty is
I'm
kind of what I was thinking about.
translucent. I am translucent.
Yeah, kind of
I'm
like unbaked cookie dough over there.
I'm like, Eric, I'm the guy that would come to your barbecue and bring potato salad with raisins in it.
Ooh,
And your
no.
relatives would be like,
Who is that guy?
what the fuck is he doing here with that?
Nothing is made better with the addition of raisins. That much I know is true.
I agree.
Absolutely
But for
agree.
audio only listeners, when you're thinking about white, that's how white I am, right? But I feel like we are doing our very best to get more diversity represented with our guests, right? But then to deny the fact that Steve has an experience and a voice that's different from the other whiteys on here, is just disrespectful to you too, right?
Yeah, I guess we should maybe back up and kind of explain the context here. So we get a lot of feedback of different types on the show, as you can imagine. The crazy far-right neo-Nazi feedback is the easiest to deal with and frankly the most hilarious because these people are they're just unbelievable. Like I don't want to give them space, so I always delete their comments. But God, you guys should see some of the stuff these people post.
Eric, you would not believe some of the comments.
They're absolutely insane. They're absolutely insane. It's just you know what? That we could do a whole episode on that. But I expect that from them, right? And I just laugh and delete it and block and move on. Where it gets challenging is people that I know their hearts are in the right place, and I know that they've been through their own struggles, and we should be ideologically on the same page, but they come after us anyway because we're not enough of what they want us to be. And that's kind of the challenge that I think that happens a lot on the left is there's this constant, and again, I say this every time we talk about this. I don't like the left-right dichotomy. We can do a whole episode on that someday. I don't personally identify as left. I think that that's kind of like outdated ways of organizing our thinking, but just for convenience's sake, right? My challenge is that often when people on the left, they make you feel like you're not enough. And I know, for example, a lot of criticism that we get is that, look, and this is true, the majority of the people behind the Fighting Matters crew, out of the 5 of us who run this thing and are recurring characters on here, 4 out of the 5 of you guys are like white as the purest snow. You're very, very white. Now, I will personally jump in here and say that is also unfair because grouping together every European culture as white, I think is inherently unfair in and of itself. But yes, Mike, for video listeners, Mike is pointing to a piece of paper. He is holding up a piece of printer paper, which he is somehow whiter than. I don't understand how that's even possible.
Amazing.
Like, you are whiter than the pure white printer paper. That is amazing, sir.
I'm just going to shut up and eat my raisins now.
Yeah. One may have to come up with a different color scheme to describe Mike Mahaffey.
I've got a completely unrelated story I'll tell you guys after. But my point before I lose my train of thought was that we're trying here, right? And our thought when we put this together was all of these, yes, it's not a diverse cast, but we just happen to be a group of characters who have gone through the same circles, and all we're willing to, frankly, take the reputational hit from speaking out in a sport that is very right-leaning. And our hope was that Well, if there's a benefit to this, at least if we all come from a position of privilege because of this, at least then we're using that privilege for something good, right? At least then we can create a space where these other people can come on and have these conversations. And we have really tried. Like, let me tell you, and this is not a criticism of people on the left, but people who are in vulnerable communities right now are extremely scared to speak up about what's happening. You know, I would
Totally.
love
Understandably.
understandably so.
For
Like,
sure.
I have reached out to a lot of people in vulnerable groups and asked them, will you come on Fighting Matters? And they're like, fuck no. I'm going through immigration paperwork right now, or my brother is going through immigration and I will get detained if this happens. So like we try to bring on a lot of gender and race representation as much as we possibly can. Political representation is too, because I don't want this to be like a left-wing only thing. But the reality is a lot of people aren't willing to speak out right now. We were, and that's why we're here. And unfortunately, we can't produce a recurring crew of as many racially diverse people as we would like, but we've really tried to bring in a diverse cast of appearances and guests, right? So, and that said, like, I mean, look, I don't know if you guys can see my name here, but like my name is Steve Kwan, right? I am an Asian Canadian. Although apparently that is not good enough for some people, I've been told. So, I mean, I don't want to turn this into like comment drama, but you know, we got criticism that, you know, there aren't enough people of color on the podcast. And I responded and said, I thought am I not a person of color? I'm Chinese. My last name is Kwan. And I was told straight up that, I am not Asian enough to present or identify as Asian. And it is, in bad faith for me to even imply so much. And I was just really taken aback by that because, again, when you get neo-Nazis in the comments, you know what you're getting into, and they're easy to deal with. You just laugh, you block, you move on. But when it's someone who supposedly shares the same belief system as you, and they take a shot at you like that, it's a very different experience. And Eric, I'm sure, I mean, you brought this up. I'm sure that you've had that experience as well, where you've been purity tested. You're not X enough to identify as X and speak on behalf of X. And it's a weird experience to be told that you, who have lived your whole life as you, are not enough of you to speak as you. It's a strange experience to go through.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And the person making that statement, you know, obviously I have no idea who they are. I don't see any of your comments, especially if they are, you know, claiming to come from, you know, whatever you're going to call it, progressive, left, liberal, whatever there is. If they're like, you need more voices like that because that will do more, but you're not Asian enough or you're not Chinese enough. Wow, what a racist thing to say. Holy cow. Like, whoa. I would love to ask them where they're, to get more information on that. Where's your metric, buddy? Like, this is going to turn into a South Park
It's not even like a
episode
one-off
pretty
thing, right?
quickly.
I mean, anyone who is engaged in a liberal comment section online has definitely seen this, where things tend to go off the rails and devolve into an argument about who is kind of the most aligned with the liberal ideal. And again, I mean, here's a good example. I don't know if you guys saw, this is very recent, but just this morning, I think, Ezra Klein published an interesting podcast about whether what is happening in Gaza is a genocide.
I just finished it. Yeah, great episode.
It's not what you think it was based on the title. At first I saw that and I thought, ooh, this better not be some weird genocide denial stuff. But it was not about that at all. It was basically, the thesis of the podcast was basically that there is actually a legal definition for what a genocide is. And it's just one of many types of horrific war crimes you can conduct. What the guest really basically said is like, look, we can argue about this, but is it really productive? Like, we can all agree that what is happening there is horrific. It's an affront to humanity. It should be offensive to everyone. Every parent who sees what happens to the children over there in Gaza should be absolutely horrified. And we can nitpick over the definition of whether this is a genocide or not, or we can all agree this is wrong, whatever we call it, and hold people accountable and do the right thing. And I thought that was an interesting thought. I mean, I think I mean, I know we haven't really talked about this. My stance is personally that I would think it meets the definition of a genocide. There are enough people smarter than me to say that it does. But at the end of the day, everyone that I know, regardless of their political beliefs, believes that this shit is awful and it needs to stop. And the question is then, is semantic language a distraction? So it was a really interesting chat. I mean, I definitely recommend people listen to it because it was a good example of how sometimes with our best intent to use the right language, it can actually become an obstacle to getting on the same page about fixing a problem.
Absolutely. Yeah, I had the same takeaway about that episode. I was also worried about kind of what the contents of it were going to be, but I thought that takeaway of, the guest, I can't remember his name, but basically boiling it down to, we can call it whatever we're going to call it, but at the end of the day, the vast majority of us can agree that it's wrong and it needs to change. And that needs to be the focus of our efforts instead of everybody getting out their dictionaries and arguing over words. And I think that takeaway needs to be applied across our entire community.
Yes.
Well, Eric, I'd love to get your perspective then, because I mean, of course we can talk about this stuff. We can talk about our own experiences, but I don't want to just complain here. I want to have a solution. What would make this better? I mean, how do we solve this problem? If the left really wants to try to put a stop to what we're seeing right now, right? If we really want to defeat MAGA and restore democracy in the States, you can't do that unless you can convince a significant amount of people to vote in the same direction. What are we missing that we need to do?
Yeah. Hey,
Yeah.
can you fix America for us, Eric?
Yeah, you didn't know.
I got to ask someone, right? I mean, we haven't asked anyone. Maybe the problem is we just haven't asked anyone yet. I asked
You didn't
him.
know
Let's see what he
Jesse
says.
was getting you into this shit, did you?
Right, exactly. What?
Poor guy.
Why am I here again? Man. I mean, I think that there's so many avenues to run down with this. But for me, I think that the people who I've spoken to, who are, let's call them right of center, right? Because the ones who are like way all the way, just super MAGA, just super into it, no one's going to change that. But the folks who are like right of center, I will go ahead and just speak on his behalf. My brother is right of center. He just has a really hard time with, he lives in California, he lives in Southern California, and a lot of like the California politics that can be seen as pretty far left are accompanied with an air of arrogance and high and mighty sort of knowing better. And that's the way he perceives it. We talk about this a lot. I don't perceive it that way. I perceive it sort of as like what we talked about earlier, a group of people who are making really hard decisions, looking out for a whole ton of people that they've never met, and making some really hard trade-offs. But I think that if they that found language that approached it differently and made it not be, we are coming across as we're doing this because we are better or smarter or more highfalutin or whatever it may be, that's going to help with the right of center folks. Also, it just feels like sometimes when we get in these, big battles over, like period testing and all of the things that we've talked about in this episode, that it just feels like common sense goes out the window really quickly. And if instead we could just take it back a couple notches and start to talk common sense and remember that we are out for a common good, and like, what is that common good, and maybe paint pictures of what that common good looks like in ways that aren't ostracizing and putting down. I don't know. That seems like the way to unite to me.
Empathy over the need to be right.
Absolutely. There you go.
That's
Said My big ramble said in 2 words.
Sorry, no, I was just listening for the common thread, and that's what I was hearing from you. So
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, just in terms of, I guess, political situations, if we want to tie this into current events, I mean, I'd love to know I guess the most obvious example right now is, I mean, one of the most vocal voices on the left is Gavin Newsom at the moment, who is doing his level best to stand up to Trump. But he also does get quite a bit of pushback from the left because he has done many things that, myself included, I mean, I don't agree with, and a lot of people on the left don't agree with. Most notably, he's made a point of trying to bridge the aisle and platform people like Steve Bannon on his podcast. I would say that's a mistake. I would say don't do that. Also, after Kamala lost, he kind of came out and moderated his stance on trans people, and really in a way that makes it sound like he's kind of abandoning those people and taking a step back. I also don't agree with that either. But I think that probably in terms of the people who can lead this movement, he's probably one of the most useful people we've got right now. And I worry that we're going to see another like Genocide Joe situation, where there was so much hate put on Joe Biden because of his inability to make action happen on the Gaza situation, that people either abstained for voting or voted for Trump. And in doing so, created a situation in Gaza that is unfathomably worse than what it would have been if Kamala Harris were elected. And I wonder, what do you guys think about situations like this? I mean, Gavin Newsom being a perfect example of a flawed person on the left who may be useful otherwise.
I mean, I've been reading whoever is running Gavin's social media department is on fire
Amazing.
lately. Oh my God. That's like South Park level ribbing at Trump and his administration. And, I think I feel similar to the way you feel, Steve. Like, Gavin has done some problematic stuff that I don't agree with. He is definitely not a perfect person, but he's one of the few Democratic leaders that I see right now that is willing to put on the boxing gloves and get in the ring with Trump and his cronies, right? And so, we can recognize that somebody isn't perfect and has some work to do on some things, while at the same time recognize that they're in general fighting for what we're fighting for, right? I mean, if he were to completely throw the trans community under the bus, I would have more issue, right? And I know there's some trans people who feel that he threw them under the bus, and I can empathize with that. So I'm not like 100% a Gavin Newsom fan. I'm not about to make red baseball caps, with Gavin's name and face on it. But he's doing some good work, and I feel like I have to recognize that too. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, I mean, I think, it goes back to the purity testing. The fact that we're even having a discussion of having to disclose, like, well, Gavin's not perfect. Well, no shit. None of us are. Are we going to agree with everything? No. Is he positioned that he could potentially push back and affect some good change in the country and start taking it back in directions that feel better and safer for the most number of people? Maybe. The intent seems like it is there.
Yes.
That is what is important to me.
Yes.
And I'm willing to make some ideological sacrifices in order to see that through. And I think that is the point of this whole conversation, right? Is we keep fighting and excluding people that aren't perfect. Fuck perfect. It's not real. We have to deal with what's in front of us. And when we've got good representatives that are doing good work and trying to push the country in a direction that we want it, we need to get behind them. And by getting behind them and being part of that coalition, then when we say things like, hey, Gavin, you know, it would really mean a lot to us if you would step up and support the trans community a little bit more. It's much easier to do that in the coalition inside the tent than throwing fucking rocks at him outside the tent.
Right.
And that is what we need to be focused on, in my opinion.
I agree. And because if you fuck it up, I mean, the stakes are so high, because if you fuck it up and you end up with someone completely unelectable by the masses, you get more of what we've got today. You know, you end up, I mean, I hate to make light of it, but wouldn't you give me a Bush, any Bush, over what we've got, right? Like,
Take fucking
Just-
Jeb over what we've got right now.
yeah.
just close
I'll
your
take
eyes and
Jenna.
grab a bush, right?
Yeah.
Exactly, right? You take any bush over what we've got going on right now. Right?
Yeah,
And so
W's
if
fucking adorable compared to what we
you-
have now.
adorbs, totally
Yeah.
huggy face, right? Like, and so you know, the stakes are just way too high to be so just particular about making everything perfectly right along the way, because if we get it wrong, we get more of this, and I don't know how much more of this we can sustain.
Not much.
Yep. It would be heartbreaking if in 2026, instead of taking the House, we saw the same kind of infighting, if people just couldn't agree and they abstained from voting and we saw another red sweep, right? That would just be absolutely devastating, possibly unrecoverable if that happens. And so I really think people need to get on the same page. And I mean, God, as someone who has very strong beliefs about trans inclusion and trans rights, I mean, I can say, like, look, Gavin Newsom may not be perfect. There's a lot of things I disagree with him on, but you are way more likely to find a workable compromise or agreement with him than you will be with Trump, right? Because if Gavin Newsom winds up being the guy in power, the worst that probably would happen is maybe it would muck up trans athlete participation in sports. If Trump retains in power, I'm really, really worried about what's going to happen to the trans community with Trump in power, especially with the movement to detainment camps. And now talking about how, well, actually, this isn't an immigration thing anymore. Now, this is about the undesirables, right? We're rounding up the homeless, the unhoused, as we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
I think it's only a matter of time before they find
The
a way to
mentally
lump.
ill.
Yep. And
Yeah, that's another.
That's the bridge I think they will use. I saw an article in Slate about that. Like if you listen to Republican talking points, they go from, undesirable to mentally ill to trans people really, really fast. And I worry that's going to be the angle that they take, where they say, oh, well, we're just we just don't want mentally ill people on the streets. And next thing you know, you've got trans people in alligator Alcatraz, right? That's the doomsday scenario as far as this is concerned. So Gavin Newsom may not be perfect, but he won't do that, which I think is something to consider.
No, I would agree. I mean, we're talking about trans folks, and I can't speak for trans folks, but yeah, I agree with you. Like, Jesus Christ, we have to we shouldn't compromise on human rights, but we can compromise on some essentially inconsequential things to get somebody better in there. Good Lord. And if gasms, good Lord, it's late in Michigan. If orgasm,
stick,
I think we found our highlight reel. Yeah,
there
we go.
if Gavin Newsom's social media keeps firing off like this, oh my God, he's going to get so much more support, I think.
Yep. Yeah, I think it's all about shit posting, man. Whoever is the best shit poster will become the next president of the United States. That's the Trump precedent,
says the king of shit posting.
Yeah,
right.
We thought it was all about experience and ethics and integrity and leadership. No, it's about shit posting.
Can we
Whoever
change
can post the zingers?
Yeah.
Can we change the Constitution to get Kwan for president?
Well, first you got to get Canadians allowed, but I'm pretty sure if I try to cross the border right now after doing this show, I expect I would get arrested. So I will probably not do that for a bit.
Probably. We're all sorry, Eric. You're on a list somewhere now, buddy.
Sweet.
Yeah, we should have warned you about that. Awesome. Well, I mean, anything else, Eric, that's on your mind that you want to add to this, or did we cover all of the main talking points here? Close it out strong, man.
I think we hit it all. I don't
Got
know.
any
I don't know how to
inspiring
close
words of
things out.
wisdom? Anything you want to share with the people?
Don't be an asshole.
Fair.
It's pretty simple.
Do you have kids, Eric?
I do. I have an 18-year-old daughter who's going into her senior year of high school, and a 14-year-old son who's going into his freshman year of high school.
I'm asking for a very
Jesse
important
knows them
reason.
well.
Very important reason, because everyone needs to know. This is a panel of 4 girl dads here then, and so I can tell you right now, K-pop Demon Hunters is legit. Okay, if your kid wants to watch K-pop Demon Hunters on Netflix, it's legit.
It's on repeat at our house. Yes.
Is
I've
it?
never heard of
The
this.
songs are getting sung. It's really out of control at the
Do you
Walker
have
house.
those songs just burned into your brain at this point, Jesse?
I don't yet, because I just have not had much exposure to it. But
You will.
Shelby and Opie have been telling me, oh, they're just endless.
Is it an anime or is it
Maybe. It's
is it live action or is it
maybe it's how would you describe it? It's like it's a type of animation that's probably closest to the Spider-Verse movies in terms of how it is. It's like this. I
Okay.
don't even know how you would describe it, but the premise of the show basically is that there are demons trying to, enter our world and eat our souls, and only a trio of K-pop singers can save the world. And so the demons they realize, God, we should do a play-by-play of this, like a full episode of this. The demons come up with the perfect plan to defeat the K-pop singers, and that is to create their own evil boy band. And so the movie is basically like this K-pop girl trio who is using their music powers to fight demons versus an evil boy band who is trying to defeat them. And it's actually way better than I'm making it sound. And the soundtrack is a banger.
That sounds like an amazing premise.
It really does.
that's
That's totally amazing.
my oldest, who moved out of state a couple months ago, that sounds like something that she would actually be into. So I'm going to ask her. She's going to kill me for mentioning that she might be into something like that on this show, but whatever. Nobody knows.
We
her,
support
so.
it. We
I
don't
know.
yuck other. Yeah, we
We're
don't
not
yuck other
purity
people's
testing here.
yum. Nope.
We're not purity
we think
testing.
It's great. No gatekeeping. We love the shit that you're into.
Exactly.
God, another thing before we tie this up, and I've been trying to get my daughter into Star Wars, and she's
How's that going?
She's not having it. She's not having it. Mom tried to get her to watch the A New Hope episode 4, so the first chronological one with Mark Hamill and Harrison Ford, the first one they made. And I asked my daughter, did you like it? And she said, Star Wars, that movie's all about meetings. It's so boring. You know what? It actually kind of is all about meetings if you think about it from a kid's perspective. It's just, especially the Phantom Menace is just literally the whole movie is just like meetings and trade embargoes. So
I started the kids on all the animated stuff.
There you go.
Rebels, Clone Wars. I think that may be a better way to go.
I think that's the way to do it. You need more flashing lights and more stimulation.
Exactly. And
I have
lightsabers everywhere.
I have a pretty bad take, even though I'm a nerd, professional software engineer. If you want to get some bad comments, here you go. They made 9 movies, an entire universe full of stuff about a fucked up family.
I mean,
it's true.
It's effectively true. And you
It's
thought,
true.
and I really thought by the time they got to episode 9 that they were going to get away from that, but then they were like, nope, it's still about the same
That's
fucking
the dig the
goofy
heels in.
family and their goofy trauma.
Right,
Yep.
right. And an abusive dad, near incest between siblings.
Yep.
Like
Oof.
it's a mental health
Binge-worthy.
worker's.
Right.
Yeah,
It
it's a
is.
social worker's
It is.
dream.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think we've bullshitted enough here. Any closing thoughts, guys? Things we want to share? Anything we want to plug? Jesse, do you have any upcoming events?
I've got something. Yes, I've got something I want to plug. I'm having one of my best friends, Mike Mahaffey, come down to Rough Hands BJJ to do a seminar on September 20th. So anybody that would love to come hear us yuck it up while he teaches us about closed guard, right?
Yeah, your favorite.
My favorite.
Mike Mahaffey, is that the guy that Thomas Rudzinski said gave the best seminar he's ever seen in his life?
Oh, I think it is.
I think it is. Yeah.
He didn't say in his life, okay? He
If
said
that
it was
dude-
pretty good, though.
If that dude wore a white gi, nobody would know he was wearing a gi.
Yeah.
True. My wife would know. She's like, where's all the chest hair?
Yeah, Mike wearing a white gi would probably look like one of those Force ghosts from Star Wars, speaking of which, right? Just like a complete pale phantom in the background. But anyway,
Yes. Oh, my God.
God, we're going to
Yeah,
eat so
but
much shit
anybody
with
that
this
wants
episode.
to anybody that wants to come hang out with me and Mike on September 20th, head over to roughhandsbjj.com. It's in the seminars section. Come join us. We'd love to meet you.
Sorry, Jesse, I didn't have my phone out when you said that. Could you please repeat that exact same thing for memory retention purposes?
Absolutely. Please go to roughhandsbjj.com and you can find Mike's seminar information in the seminars and events section of the website.
Amazing. And because I know that people now have listened, but they didn't actually do it, I'm going to repeat it again. Go to roughhandsbjj.com and register for that seminar. There you go. You can tell I've done this a few times. I know how to get these people.
Once or
Okay.
twice.
Awesome. Great chat, guys. Appreciate
Thanks,
it as
everybody.
always. Thanks all. We'll talk to you
Appreciate
guys
you
next
guys.
time.